We knew her as Elise Tompkins. The wider world knows her through her award-winning books of poetry published under her married name, Elise Partridge. Sadly, we lost her quite recently on January 31st, 2015. Others among you may have known her well at Winthrop House or as part of her network of friends in the worlds of poetry and literature. I'm here as a representative of the small community of classmates who lived in Gray's East during freshman year. Unfortunately, we recently learned that this community is even smaller than we realized as we lost another member, Paul Yearwood, 15 years ago and didn't know it. So we remember Paul as well. When I arrived in September 1976 from my public school in Michigan with great insecurity about whether I belonged and with stereotypes in my head about what these East Coast private school people would be like, I had the great fortune to meet Elise as literally the first classmate that I met on move-in day, and she was an East Coast private school person. She lived directly across the hall from me, and I am forever grateful that Elise was the source of my first impression of people at Harvard. She was thoughtful, friendly, creative, and kind. She talked about poetry during our first days here as teenagers, and she was still pursuing her passion for poetry 35 years after graduation. At the very end, putting the finishing touches on a book of poetry that was published posthumously in April. Elise taught at several universities, most recently the University of British Columbia, where her husband Stephen is a faculty member. She was an accomplished poet whose work appeared in such visible outlets as the New Republic and the New Yorker, as well as in her 3 books. As a thoughtful and honest observer of life, Elise wrote poems about many things, including her cancer treatments. And these particular poems appeared in her second book, Chameleon Hours, a volume that won the Canadian Authors Association Award for Poetry and was a finalist for the British Columbia Book Prize. In an interview about the book, Elise said, "Many of the poems, I suppose, ask implicit questions about fullness of life or lives somehow thwarted, diminished, ended too early, about how we spend our time, treat our fellow human beings, or our environment." I feel honored to own a copy of that volume that Elise inscribed and sent to me several years ago. She was widely admired and greatly appreciated for her generosity in guiding and supporting other poets and writers. Similarly, she was keenly interested and warmly supportive of her friends working in other fields. One writer said about Elise, "Her desire to reach out to writers whose work she admired made those of us fortunate enough to benefit from her attentions feel truly seen and understood." We are all fortunate to still have the opportunity to know something of Elise through her enduring legacy, her poems. In addition to Chameleon Hours, there is her first book, Fielder's Choice, and her recent book, The Exiles Gallery. She was and is and will remain in the future someone worth knowing, whose words are worth hearing. Let me close by leaving you with some of Elise's own words. I asked her husband for some recommendations, and this is a very short poem entitled Invitation. "The stag and doe lift their heads in the brush, ears raised as if attuned to our tears. The grass reaches through chairs by the shed as if to thatch cushions for the pair of us. The gate that won't quite shut with its scruff of lichen invites us to the orchard, to pick till time and times are done our choice of bursting plums."